Welcome to a tale woven from the threads of night and memory, a story that breathes in the spaces between waking and dreaming. There is a city, veiled in an eternal dusk, where the cobblestones remember the tread of desperate feet, and the air hums with forgotten prayers. It is a place of profound mystery, where the hunt begins not with a roar, but with a whisper, and the true monsters are not the beasts that stalk the streets, but the truths that lurk in the silence. Tonight, we will wander through the dreamlike narrative of Bloodborne, setting aside the clatter of steel to listen to the echoes of a world touched by beings beyond the stars. We will follow the trail of Paleblood, a mystery that leads from the healing halls of Yharnam into the vast, terrible cosmos. So find a comfortable rest, close your eyes, and let the fog of this story settle around you, a long and somber lullaby for the quiet hours. Let us begin in the deep, geological past, long before the first stone of Yharnam was ever laid, in the sunless, resonant labyrinths carved by the Pethumerians. They were not beasts, not then, but a people who built their civilization in the profound dark, their cities vast, inverted cathedrals of stone that pulsed with a rhythm not of this earth. They were the first caretakers, the first guardians, living in such intimate proximity to the bedrock of reality that they could not help but brush against the beings that slumbered there. Entities of such immense and alien thought that their very presence warped the stone, infused the air, and whispered secrets into the dreams of those who dwelled below. The Pethumerians communed with these great ones, learned from them, perhaps even served them, and in doing so they discovered the old blood. It was a substance of paradox, thick and slow-moving like mercury, yet alive with a faint, internal luminescence, a liquid that seemed to contain not just life, but memory and ambition, and a terrible, latent potential. For a time, it granted them longevity, strength, a connection to the cosmos that hummed just beyond the veil of ordinary perception. But such gifts are never free, and the price was a slow, fundamental alteration, a seed of transformation planted deep within their very essence, a patient scourge waiting for the right conditions to bloom. Centuries turned to dust, and the Pethumerian civilization crumbled into silence, leaving only their echoing tombs and their cursed legacy as a warning written in a language no one could yet read. Upon the surface, where the sun still held some sway, a humble settlement took root, a cluster of timber and stone nestled in a valley between unforgiving mountains. This was the nascent Yharnam, a place known only for its skilled blood ministers and its peculiar, reclusive traditions. It was here, in the scholarly enclave of Biogenworth, that the past began to stir. Master Willem, a man whose mind was a vast library of arcane curiosities, presided over this college by the lake. He was not a man of action, but of profound, patient contemplation, his eyes turned perpetually towards the water, as if seeking answers in its placid, reflective surface. It was his researchers, delving into the forbidden chalice dungeons that punctured the earth beneath their feet, who rediscovered the Pethumerian catacombs and the holy medium within. They found the old blood, glistening in ancient, ritualistic urns, and with it, they found the mangled, beautiful corpses of the Great One's kin, and the first, horrifying revelations of a cosmos teeming with life so far beyond human understanding that it rendered their own existence a fleeting, insignificant footnote. The discovery was a tremor that would become an earthquake. Lawrence, Willem's most brilliant and ambitious pupil, saw not just knowledge in the old blood, but power. He saw a future where humanity could shed its frail, mortal coil and ascend to a higher plane. Where Willem counseled caution, urging his students to seek eyes on the inside. A metaphorical awakening of the mind to perceive the cosmos without going mad. Lawrence dreamed of a more tangible, immediate evolution. This philosophical schism was a quiet, academic thing at first, a difference of opinion in a dusty lecture hall, but its consequences would drown a city in blood. Lawrence left Biogenwith, taking a vial of the sacred medium with him, and returned to the growing town of Yharnam. With the power of the old blood, which could mend broken bones, cure consumption, and grant a vitality that bordered on the supernatural, he founded the healing church. And the people, desperate for miracles, flocked to him. They came on crutches, they came coughing blood into handkerchiefs, they came with the weary desperation of those for whom science and faith had offered no solace. And the church gave them what they wanted. It gave them blood. And so Yharnam began to transform, not just in spirit, but in stone and mortar. The simple settlement was swallowed whole by a new, ambitious architecture, a forest of gothic spires that clawed at the perpetually twilight sky, as if the city itself were straining to reach the heavens it so desperately sought to emulate. Grand cathedrals were erected, their flying buttresses like the skeletal ribs of some colossal, petrified beast, their stained glass windows depicting not saints, but abstract, geometric patterns that hinted at cosmic truths. The streets became a labyrinth, a winding, claustrophobic maze of cobblestones and narrow alleyways, where the tall, leaning buildings seemed to whisper secrets to one another across the cramped thoroughfares. The air, once fresh with the scent of pine from the surrounding forests, grew thick and heavy, perpetually tinged with the coppery scent of blood, and the faint, sweet odor of incense burned to mask something far less holy. Society stratified around this new religion of the body, with the healing church and its ministers at the apex, a new aristocracy of healers whose word was law and whose blood was divinity. For a time, it was a golden age. The scourge of disease was beaten back. Yharnam became a beacon, a pilgrimage site for the sick and the hopeful from every corner of the world. They called it the City of Blood, and they said its ministers could perform miracles. And for a while they could, but the old blood never forgets its purpose. The beast, dormant within that holy medium, was merely waiting, patient as the turning of the stars for its time to come. The first transformations were hushed-up affairs, tragedies explained away as isolated incidents of madness or strange, new illnesses. A respected blacksmith was found in his workshop, his body twisted, his bones elongating into cruel, bestial shapes, his mind reduced to a snarl of primal fury. A devoted mother, known for her piety, turned on her family one night, her gentle hands now ending in ragged claws. The healing church, in its hubris, initially saw these not as failures of their sacrament, but as impurities in the recipients, a lack of faith, a moral weakness. They would not admit that the very source of their power was the source of their damnation. To maintain order, to protect their glorious vision, they created a new institution, the hunt. At first, it was a quiet, secretive thing. Men and women of particular resolve and physical prowess were recruited, given specialized weapons, and sent out into the night to cleanse the city of these unfortunate souls. They were the first hunters, and their work was a grim, necessary secret, the dark underbelly of Yharnam's radiant miracle. But the blood ministering continued, the transformations grew more frequent, and the beastly scourge began to seep from the shadows into the main streets, until the hunt was no longer a secret, but a regular, terrifying event. A night of terror where the citizens barred their doors and prayed for the sunrise, while the sounds of screams and the baying of hounds echoed through the fog-choked lanes. This brings us back to the quiet, scholarly shores of Biogenwith, a place that had become a relic of a bygone age, a sanctuary of thought slowly being reclaimed by the ivy and the lake's mist. Master Willem, now ancient and still, sat in his chair overlooking the water, a living monument to his own philosophy. His body was frail, but his mind was fixed upon the cosmos. He understood the folly of Lawrence's path, the crude, physical reliance on the blood. For Willem, true ascension was not of the body, but of the mind. It was an internal metamorphosis, a gaining of insight that would allow a human to perceive the higher dimensions, to understand the great ones not as gods to be supplicated, but as fellow intelligences in a vast, cold universe. His mantra, "Fear the old blood," was less a warning about the beastly scourge and more a plea against the easy, seductive path of physical power. He urged his students to line their brains with eyes, to see the world as it truly was, a dizzying, layered reality where the mundane and the cosmic coexisted. This pursuit of insight led to strange and wondrous discoveries within the college grounds, most notably the lumenwood, a species of celestial plant life that seemed to have bloomed from a spore fallen from the stars. Its flowers glowing with a soft, internal light that illuminated truths rather than surfaces. But the pursuit of such profound knowledge is never without its costs, and the greatest cost, the most tragic and pivotal, was borne by a scholar named Rom. She was, by all accounts, a diligent and gifted student, one who took Master Willem's teachings to their ultimate, literal conclusion. Through some ritual, some immense act of will or sacrifice, she was granted her wish. She gained eyes on the inside, but the human mind is a fragile vessel, and the torrent of cosmic truth was too much for her to process, to synthesize. It did not elevate her to a higher state of being, it shattered her. Her consciousness retreated into a vacant, childlike state, while her physical form bloated and transformed into a pale, passive, vacuous spider, a creature of pure, uncomprehending insight. She was granted a power she could not wield, and in her emptiness, she became a linchpin. Unwittingly, her very existence began to act as a veil, a barrier that hid the full, horrifying truth of the cosmos from the waking world. She sat at the bottom of the Moonside Lake, a lake that was not a body of water, but a plane of existence. And her vacant gaze held back the maddening sight of the Great Ones and their nightmare realms, keeping the people of Yharnam blissfully, safely ignorant of the horrors that danced just beyond the thin fabric of their reality. This was the schism's final, terrible consequence. Willem had sought to lift the veil, and in doing so, he had created the very thing that kept it in place. Meanwhile, the healing church in Yharnam grew in power and complexity, its structure becoming as labyrinthine and fortified as the city it ruled. The grand cathedral, hewn from white stone that seemed to glow in the perpetual twilight, became its heart, a place where the highest echelons of the clergy performed their most sacred and secret rites. But within this monolithic institution, factions formed, each interpreting the legacy of the old blood in their own, increasingly divergent and fanatical ways. The choir, operating from the upper cathedral ward, were the intellectuals, the successors to Willem's pursuit of knowledge, albeit through the medium of the blood. They sought direct communion with the Great Ones, building the orphanage as a place to nurture and study celestial children. And their symbol was the slug-like, embryonic form of a kin, representing a potential for rebirth. They were cold, clinical, and utterly detached from the human suffering in the streets below, their eyes fixed on the cosmos. Then there was the School of Mensis, a group of scholars who pursued a more aggressive, ritualistic path to contact. They believed that through grand, theatrical ceremonies and the sacrifice of human consciousness, they could brute force a connection to the divine. Their methods were barbaric, their rituals conducted in unseen chapels and nightmarish lecture halls, and their ambition would lead to one of the most catastrophic events in Yharnam's history. And of course, there were the hunters. What began as a necessary, if grim, secret police had evolved into a formalized arm of the church. The first true hunter was Jayaman, a man of practical skill and profound sadness, who worked under the guidance of the church to establish the hunter's workshop. Here, in a dusty, timber-framed building filled with the scent of oil and old blood, he designed the trick weapons, cleavers that unfolded into great swords, saws that could tear and rend, stakes that could pierce and drive, tools of beautiful, brutal efficiency. He also trained the first generation of hunters, imparting not just technique, but a certain stoic pragmatism. But the church's influence corrupted even this. The hunters, once a scalpel, became a cudgel. Their purpose shifted from merely culling the beasts to actively seeking out and destroying any who threatened the church's doctrine. This led to a secret, bloody war against the Vilebloods of Canehurst Castle, a lineage of nobles who had discovered their own source of old blood, tainted by a different, more visceral lineage. and who sought a child of blood to continue their corrupted line. The hunters were sent to exterminate them, to purge this heresy, and the conflict left the castle a frozen, spectral ruin, a monument to the church's ruthless expansionism. Yet, even as the hunters enforced the church's will, the corruption was festering within the church itself. The very blood that empowered them was the source of the plague they fought, and many a hunter, in the heat of the hunt, would feel the old, familiar rage burning in their own veins, the temptation to give in to the beast within. This cyclical violence, this endless, self-perpetuating hunt, required a mechanism, a way to ensure that there would always be a hunter to wield the cleaver, a dream to sustain the hunter. And so we come to the most poignant and personal of realms, the hunter's dream. It is a place outside of time, a soft, gray copy of Jayaman's original workshop, nestled in a tranquil, eternal twilight. The air is still and quiet, smelling of damp earth, blooming flowers, and the faint, metallic scent of the workshop's forge. Here, the hunter you follow, the outsider who signed a contract for a simple blood healing, finds a refuge and a prison. The dream is a creation born from a desperate, tragic pact. Jayaman, the first hunter, now old and broken by his countless years of slaughter, made contact with a great one known as the Moon Presence. His motivations are shrouded in grief, perhaps for a lost apprentice, perhaps for his own stolen humanity. In his despair, he called out, and the Moon Presence, a being that embodies the very concept of the hunt, answered. It bound Jayaman to the dream, making him its eternal host and caretaker, a guide for the endless procession of hunters who would be drawn into the night. In return, it gave him a surrogate for his loss. The doll, a life-sized porcelain figure of exquisite craftsmanship, modeled after his beloved Maria. She is a being of pure, gentle compassion, animated by the power of the dream, who tends to the hunters, offering silent solace and a means to grow stronger. The hunter's dream is the engine of the cycle. When a hunter falls in the waking world, they do not die. They simply awaken here in the soft glow of the headstone-laden garden, their body and spirit restored, their mission unfulfilled. They are a pawn, an unwitting instrument of the Moon Presence, bound to the dream until the night's hunt is concluded, until the source of the current scourge is silenced. This creates a haunting relationship between the layers of reality. The waking world of Yharnam is the stage, a city drowning in its own sin and blood. The hunter's dream is the green room, the place of preparation and respite. And then there are the nightmare realms, fever dream landscapes born from concentrated trauma and sin, places like the hunter's nightmare, where the sins of the first hunters are eternally punished, or the nightmare of Mensis, a brain-mad realm born from a failed ritual. The hunter can traverse them all, a ghost moving through the layers of a city's collective unconscious, each realm reflecting a different facet of the central cosmic tragedy. And at the center of it all is Jayaman, sleeping fitfully in his wheelchair beneath the skeletal, blossoming tree, his dreams haunted by the memories of a life he can no longer live, his freedom a distant, impossible hope. while the pale, unseen moon of his captor hangs forever in the sky, watching, waiting, ensuring the hunt goes on. The doll, in her silent, graceful movements, becomes the hunter's only constant in this shifting tapestry of realities. Her porcelain fingers, cool and smooth to the touch, offer a strange, artificial comfort. She does not breathe, yet the air around her seems to stir with a gentle purpose. When she tends the small, winter-blooming flowers that grow in patches of soft soil between the headstones, her motions are so fluid, so deliberate, that one could almost forget she is a construct, a golem of pity and memory given life by a power that understands nothing of human sorrow, yet mimics its forms with heartbreaking accuracy. She speaks in a voice that is like the whisper of silk, offering guidance not with words of strategy, but with affirmations of strength, of resilience. "May you find your worth in the waking world," she says, and the phrase hangs in the still air of the dream, a benediction and a question all at once. What is worth in a world where reality itself is a frayed and tattered cloth? Is it found in the killing of beasts, in the unraveling of mysteries, or in the simple, profound act of enduring, of waking up again and again in this soft, gray sanctuary, ready to walk back into the maelstrom? And walk back the hunter does, each time placing a hand upon a cold, moss-slick headstone that serves as a conduit, a focus for the will to return. The transition is not a violent one, but a subtle unweaving. The scent of the dream's flowers, a fragile, melancholic perfume of jasmine and damp earth, fades, replaced by the immediate, aggressive stench of old blood, open sewers, and gunpowder. The profound silence is shattered by the distant, echoing cacophony of Yharnam's eternal night. The guttural growls of things that were once men, the frantic barking of the hunter's hounds, the mad, weeping laughter that drifts from behind bolted shutters. The cobblestones, which in the dream are merely a soft, undefined gray, are here vividly real, each one worn smooth by generations of desperate feet, each crack filled with a dark, viscous residue that might be mud, or might be something else entirely. The fog that perpetually clings to the city is not a uniform blanket, but a living, shifting entity. In some alleys, it is a thin, gauzy veil that softens the edges of the looming architecture. In the wider plazas, it pools in thick, choking banks that swallow sound and light, making every shadow a potential hiding place, every echo a potential threat. This is the central Yharnam that the hunter navigates, a district that has become the very heart of the scourge. It is a monument to the failure of the healing church's promise, its grandeur now a shell for a festering infection. The elaborate gas lamps, once a symbol of the city's progress, now cast a sickly, jaundiced glow, their light struggling to penetrate the miasma, creating more confusing shadows than they dispel. The sounds are a symphony of despair. Beyond the bestial snarls, one can hear the faint, desperate prayers of citizens huddled behind their doors, their voices trembling with a faith that has long since curdled into superstition. "Plague-ridden rat," they might scream as you pass, their fear manifesting as hatred for the outsider. Or in a more piteous tone, "It's all your fault." a collective, unspoken understanding that the hunter's presence signifies a turning of the cycle, a night when the horrors are not just outside, but are being actively, violently confronted, stirring the pot of the city's suffering. The beasts themselves are not mere monsters. They are tragedies frozen in a single, agonizing moment of transformation. To look upon them is to witness a perverse archaeology of the soul. One might encounter a townsman, his clothes still largely intact, now ripping at the seams over a body that has swelled with grotesque muscle, his face elongated into a canine muzzle, his cries a mangled hybrid of human sob and animal howl. In him you see the humble carpenter, the jovial butcher, the father. Another, further along in its metamorphosis, might be a cleric beast, a thing of such distorted scale and bone that it seems less a transformed man and more a walking cathedral of pain, its spine a grotesque, branching candelabra of exposed vertebrae, its roar a sound that seems to tear the very air. Each one is a testament to the old blood's cruel promise, a life offered up to the altar of ambition and then broken upon it. The hunt is not a glorious purge, but a grim sanitation, a putting down of rabid animals who were, only days or hours before, praying in the pews of the grand cathedral, receiving the very sacrament that has unmade them. It is here, in the blood-soaked streets, that the hunter begins to gather the first, fragmented echoes of the larger story. They find notes, scrawled on torn parchment in a desperate, shaking hand, left on barrels or nailed to doors. Seek the healing church, one might read, a piece of advice that is now bitterly ironic. The red moon hangs low and beasts rule the streets. Beware the frailty of men. Their wills are weak, minds befuddled, says another, hinting at the collective psychological breakdown that accompanies the physical scourge. These are the last thoughts of a dying civilization, messages in a bottle tossed into a sea of blood. They speak of a fear that has moved beyond the mere physical threat of fangs and claws and into a metaphysical dread, a sense that the world itself is coming undone at the seams. The very architecture seems to whisper these truths. The stone gargoyles leering from the rooftops no longer seem like mere decorations, but like sentinels for a different, older god. The patterns on the manhole covers, intricate and spiraling, begin to look less like artistic flourishes and more like arcane sigils, designed to contain or channel something unspeakable. And through this labyrinth of despair, the hunter is guided by a voice, a soft, weary, and deeply resonant voice that emanates from a small, resonant bell and a skull. This is the voice of a man who has seen the heart of the mystery and has been broken by it. He is Jura, a hunter of a previous age, who has laid down his weapon and now keeps a solitary vigil from the top of a towering, burned-out windmill in old Yharnam, a district sealed away and left to rot by the healing church after a cleansing fire failed to contain its outbreak. His words, transmitted through some lingering arcane connection, are a splash of cold water on the hunter's assumed purpose. The things you hunt, they're not beasts, he intones, his voice heavy with a tragic wisdom. They're people, just people. His perspective introduces the first profound crack in the hunter's reality. What if the hunt is not a noble crusade, but a genocide? What if the beasts are not monsters to be slain, but victims to be pitied? Jura has gained a terrible insight, and it has rendered him unable to continue the cycle. He has chosen to protect the very creatures he was once tasked to destroy, seeing in their snarling faces the last vestiges of the humanity the Church has stolen from them. His presence is a moral quandary given form, a ghost of conscience haunting the periphery of the hunt. This journey through the city's physical and moral decay is but the first layer of the onion. The hunter's actions, their very progress, begins to affect the fabric of reality itself. The pale, unseen moon, a constant, watchful presence, begins to descend. It is a slow, imperceptible process at first, noticed only in the deepening of the shadows, the intensifying of the bestial frenzy in the streets. This is the approach of the Paleblood moon, a celestial event foretold in the scrawled notes and the mad ramblings of the few still sane inhabitants. When the red moon hangs low, the line between man and beast is blurred, a note might warn. This is not a metaphor. The moon's descent is a literal thinning of the veil, a weakening of the barriers that Rom, the vacuous spider, unconsciously maintains. As the hunter delves deeper, challenging the sources of the scourge, slaying the cleric beast on the great bridge, whose death cry is a seismic event in the spiritual landscape, or besting Father Gascoigne, a hunter who has tragically succumbed to the very bloodlust he was meant to control. They are not just clearing areas of monsters. They are, with each significant death, plucking at the threads of the web that Rom has spun. They are making the world more real, and in doing so, more terrible. The death of Gascoigne, in particular, is a microcosm of the entire tragedy. He is found in a graveyard, a place of final rest that has become a stage for endless violence, hacking away at beasts with a familiar, desperate fury. He fights with the same tools as the hunter, his movements a grim reflection of their own. He is a mirror, a warning. And when he, in his final moments, fully succumbs to the beastly scourge, transforming into a monstrous, wolf-like creature, it is a transformation born of grief. The tiny, blood-stained music box found on his daughter, a pathetic, tinkling melody that briefly calms him, is a heart-wrenching clue to a personal tragedy lost to the blood madness. To kill him is not to triumph over a foe, but to perform a mercy, killing on a future version of oneself. It is to understand that the hunter is not immune, that the same rage that fuels their attacks, the same reliance on the rallying power of spilled blood to heal their own wounds, is the very pathway the scourge uses to enter the soul. The line between man and beast is not a wall, it is a tightrope, and every hunter walks it with every swing of their weapon. This path of escalating violence and deepening mystery inevitably leads the hunter to the source of the Church's power, and to the first true glimpse behind the veil. The journey to the cathedral ward is an ascent, both physical and symbolic. The hunter leaves the cramped, visceral chaos of the lower city and climbs towards the spires, towards the seat of the institution that authored this nightmare. The architecture becomes more imposing, more overtly religious, and less domestic. The air grows colder, thinner, carrying less of the coppery stench of the streets and more of that cloying, sacred incense. The enemies here are different, too, no longer just transformed citizens, but the formal guardians of the faith. Church servants, their heads covered in white, featureless hoods, swinging giant crucifixes not as symbols of salvation, but as bludgeons. And the church giants, hulking, slow-moving titans whose immense size and power are a direct result of their profound exposure to the old blood, their bodies swollen to the point of parody, their minds likely reduced to a single, obedient impulse. They are the walking embodiment of the church's doctrine, immense, powerful, and utterly vacant. It is here that the hunter encounters Vicar Amelia, a figure who represents the pinnacle and the failure of the healing church's original, perhaps even sincere, intent. She is found in the grand cathedral itself, kneeling before the altar, not in prayer, but in a desperate, clawing struggle with her own transformation. She clutches a golden pendant, her fingers, already thickening, already beginning to sprout coarse, bestial fur, wrapped tightly around it as if it were a lifeline. Her prayers are not words, but guttural, agonized sounds, the human language dissolving in her throat. When the hunter approaches, she does not immediately attack. She seems to be pleading, holding up the pendant as a ward, as a reminder of who she is or was. The transformation, when it finally overtakes her, is a scene of both horror and profound pathos. Her body contorts, erupting into a magnificent, terrifying beast, a creature of gleaming white fur and antlers that look like a blasphemous crown. She is a cleric beast, but unlike the one on the bridge, her form retains a twisted, sacred elegance. To fight her is to fight the church itself, to confront the beautiful, monstrous lie at the heart of the miracle. When she falls, the pendant drops from her lifeless grasp, and the hunter who touches it is granted a vision, a flash of memory of Lawrence, the first vicar, in a moment of fraught decision, parting from Master Willem with those final, fateful words. Fear the old blood. It is a memory etched into the very object, a last, desperate warning from the man who started it all, now heard by the one who must finish it. With Amelia's death, a key pillar of the current order is broken. The ritual she was performing, a desperate attempt to maintain the veil, is shattered. And in the world outside the cathedral, the sky changes. The pale moon, which has been slowly descending, now blooms into a vivid, bloody red. The pale blood moon has descended fully, and its effect is immediate and catastrophic. The world is washed in a crimson glow, a light that feels thick and heavy like liquid. The air hums with a new, higher-pitched frequency, a psychic scream that is felt in the teeth and bones. The beasts in the streets become more frenzied, their forms more unstable, more fluid. But the true change is more subtle, more insidious. The hunter, their mind now opened by the progression of the night and the acquisition of insight, begins to see what was always there, but hidden. Amygdalae, the great ones of a lower order, become visible, clinging to the faces of the cathedrals like grotesque stone barnacles, their multiple arms wrapped possessively around the spires, their many eyes staring down with a passive, ancient indifference. They were always there, watching, but Rom's veil kept them invisible to the uninsighted. Now the veil is torn, and the true, terrifying cosmology of Yharnam is laid bare. The city was never just a city. It is a nest, a feeding ground, a church built for gods that are not gods, and the hunter is not just a hunter of beasts, but a canary in a cosmic coal mine, descending deeper into a truth that devours sanity. The hunt is no longer about blood, it is about perception. And the red moon hangs low, an unblinking, sanguine eye watching the final act begin. The descent of the red moon does not merely alter the light. It rewrites the very substance of the air, the texture of silence, the meaning of shadow. That crimson glow is not a filter laid over the world, but a transfusion, as if the sky itself has been flayed, and its raw, vital essence is now seeping down, soaking into the cobblestones, beading on the wrought iron fences, glistening on the terrified eyes of those few who still dare to peer from behind their curtains. The familiar growls and whimpers of the beasts take on a new, resonant quality, harmonizing with the low, pervasive hum that now vibrates from the stones. A fundamental frequency of revelation that makes the teeth ache and the mind feel thin, stretched taut over a chasm of understanding. This is the world as it truly is, has always been, and the comfort of ignorance is a luxury that has been violently revoked. It is in this newly revealed, terrifying clarity that the hunter's path turns inward, upward, towards the source of the scholarly schism that birthed this age. The way to Biogenwith is less a road and more a forgetting, a leaving behind of the city's gothic anguish for something older, quieter, and far more profound. The carriage ride, if one can secure it through the now apocalyptic streets, carries the hunter away from the claustrophobic canyons of Yharnam and into the whispering, pine-scented darkness of the woods. The air cools, cleansed of the metallic stench of blood, replaced by the rich, loamy fragrance of decaying leaves and damp bark. The sounds of the hunt fade, not into silence, but into a different kind of chorus. The churring of unseen insects, the rustle of things moving through the undergrowth, the sigh of the wind through countless needles. It feels like traveling backward in time, to an era before the church, before the blood, to the very root of the knowledge that would eventually poison the tree. The college itself appears as a ruin, a beautiful, melancholic relic slumbering beside the vast, still expanse of the lake. Its buildings are of a simpler, more robust architecture than Yharnam's spires, their stonework worn smooth by rain and time, their windows dark and vacant. Ivy claims the walls not as a conqueror, but as a gentle shroud, a natural burial cloth for a dream that has long since ended. The silence here is not the terrified hush of a city holding its breath, but the deep, contemplative quiet of a library after all the readers have gone home. This is the place where the first, fateful decisions were made, where the line between reverence and transgression was first crossed, and the air is heavy with the ghost of those academic debates, their intellectual passion now curdled into cosmic consequence. At the water's edge, in a chair that seems to have grown from the stone of the balcony, sits the living monument to the path not taken. Master Willem is less a man now and more a geological formation, a testament to the power of a single, unwavering thought. His body is frail, desiccated, nearly fused with the chair, his skin like parchment stretched over ancient bone. His hand, resting on his knee, is a claw, but it is not clenched in a fist. It is open, receptive. His eyes, clouded with age, are not turned inward, but are fixed upon the placid, mirror-like surface of the lake. He does not move as the hunter approaches. He may not even be aware of them as an individual. He is a consciousness that has been distilled to its purest form, a vessel for a single, all-consuming inquiry. He seeks the cosmos in the reflection of the water, and the hunter, a product of the blood he so feared, is merely a ripple on its surface, a momentary disturbance in his eternal contemplation. To speak to him is futile. He can only rasp his mantra, a warning that has become his entire identity, the final exhalation of a life spent staring into the abyss. Fear the old blood. The words are not spoken to the hunter, but to the universe itself, a final, unanswered question. But the true secret of Biogenwith does not reside in the crumbling lecture halls or the dusty libraries. It is held in the lake, the Moonside Lake, which is not a body of water at all, but a liminal space, a bubble of reality suspended between the waking world and the nightmare. Gaining access to it requires a key, a relic, an act of will that feels less like unlocking a door and more like forgetting how to swim, allowing oneself to sink through the concept of lake and into the truth beneath. The transition is a dissolution. The scent of pine and water vanishes, replaced by a void, a scentless, soundless expanse. Then the hunter is there. The Moonside Lake is a plane of impossible geometry and profound stillness. There is no up or down, only a vast, stardusted blackness that feels both infinite and claustrophobically intimate. The ground is an illusion, a surface that ripples with soft, internal light with every step, as if walking on the skin of a galaxy. And in the center of this silent, cosmic tableau rests Rom, the vacuous spider. She is a creature of heart-breaking absurdity, a being of immense power trapped in a form of profound helplessness. Her body is a great, bloated, pallid abdomen, from which countless spindly, delicate legs splay out, twitching occasionally with no conscious purpose. Her head, if it can be called that, is small and human-like, buried in the fur of her own body, her eyes vacant and unseeing. She does not attack. She does not acknowledge the hunter's presence. She simply is, a keystone in the arch of reality, her very emptiness maintaining the illusion of a sane world. The lesser spiders that skitter across the luminous plain are not her children, but her thoughts, her insights, mindless, fragmented, and defensive, attacking not out of malice, but out of a blind, instinctual need to protect the fragile stasis she represents. To engage her is to commit a kind of deicide, but not a violent one. It is a euthanasia of the real. The battle is a surreal, silent ballet in the void. The hunter moves through a constellation of skittering, crystalline legs, their weapons striking against a creature that offers no resistance, only a passive, monumental existence. There is no rage here, no bestial fury, only the solemn, terrible necessity of pulling back a curtain. With each blow, the hunter is not harming a foe, but unpicking a stitch in the fabric of perceived reality. The act feels less like a victory and more like a transgression, a necessary sin against the comfort of ignorance. When Rom finally stills, when the last twitch fades from her countless legs and her vacant form begins to dissolve into motes of pale light, the effect is not immediate. There is a moment of perfect, absolute silence in the moonside lake, a held breath. And then the veil tears. The return to the waking world is a violent, sensory assault of a magnitude that defies description. The red moon is no longer just a presence in the sky. It is now a crushing, overwhelming fact. It hangs so low it seems one could reach up and touch its bloody, porous surface, feeling the terrible, living warmth it now radiates. The hum that was once a background nuisance is now a deafening roar, a psychic tsunami that washes over the city, scouring away the last vestiges of normalcy. The air itself seems to thicken, becoming a soupy, crimson medium that is difficult to breathe. The shrieking that now echoes from every corner of Yharnam is not the sound of beasts, but of human minds breaking en masse, finally perceiving the full, horrifying grandeur of the cosmos they inhabit. The amygdalae, no longer passive observers, now stir, their stony limbs shifting with a sound of grinding continents, their countless eyes focusing with a new, unsettling awareness. The city is no longer a city under siege from a plague. It is an altar, and the sacrifice is the sanity of every soul within it. The hunter, standing now not as a mere participant, but as a catalyst for this apocalypse, finds the world transformed in more subtle, intimate ways as well. The doll in the dream, once a figure of serene passivity, now speaks with a new, faintly sorrowful nuance. The night and the dream were long, she might say, her porcelain face tilted towards the ever-watchful moon of the dream, as if sharing a silent communion with the horror that now dominates the waking world. Even Jayaman, in his fitful sleep, seems more agitated, his dreams plagued by a deeper, more resonant terror. The little ones in the lecture building, the shriveled, pathetic scholars trapped in their own nightmare of academia, now weep with a renewed, understanding despair. They have their eyes on the inside now, too, and the lecture they are forever attending is one taught by the red moon itself, a lesson in cosmic insignificance. This new, revealed world offers a path that was previously inaccessible, a road that leads to the very pinnacle of the healing church's ambition and the depths of its failure. The way to Yahagal, the unseen village, is now open, but it is not a path one walks so much as one is absorbed by it. The village is a monument to the school of Mensis and their catastrophic ritual, a place where the very stones are woven from nightmare stuff, and the air is a frigid, breath-stealing chill that has nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with the absence of hope. The buildings here are not merely decrepit, they are distorted, their angles all wrong, their surfaces shimmering with a nauseating internal light, as if the entire district is a three-dimensional image struggling to hold its form. The citizens of Yahargul are no longer beasts, but something far worse. The Mensis corpses, their bodies desiccated and still, frozen in the postures of their final, agonized prayers, while their minds, their consciousness, has been forcibly ripped away to fuel a ritual that has left them as empty, twitching husks. They are a forest of the damned, their silent screams a permanent feature of the atmosphere. And everywhere there is the singing. A low, resonant, choral hum that seems to emanate from the stones, from the air, from the hunter's own bones. It is a melody of summoning, a desperate, mad prayer directed at the cosmos. This is the Mensis ritual, still ongoing, a failed attempt to contact a great one that has instead created a self-sustaining nightmare, a pocket dimension of concentrated insanity. The hunter moves through this landscape as a foreign body, an infection of reality in a realm that has rejected it. The very enemies here are born of this distorted space. The cramped caskets, wooden coffins that skitter and writhe with a horrible, insectoid life. The bell-ringing women whose constant, maddening tolling summons endless, phantasmal hunters from the ether, their forms blurred and indistinct, their purpose only to eliminate the one solid, real thing in this place of echoes. The purpose of this journey, the terrible gravity that pulls the hunter through the nightmare of Yahargul, is the source of the ritual itself, the Mensis brain. But to reach it, one must first confront the architect of this madness, the one who gave his name and his body to the ceremony. Murgo's loft, a spiraling, impossible tower that seems to be constructed from solidified panic and childhood terror, is the heart of the nightmare. And at its base, in an arena of ringing bells and swirling, phantom forms, waits Mikolash, host of the nightmare. He is not a beast, not a monster, but a man or the ghost of one. He is a scholar, driven to the absolute extreme of Willem's philosophy, a man who sought eyes on the inside and found only a labyrinth from which he cannot escape. He flees from the hunter through the shifting, non-Euclidean halls of his own mind, his voice echoing from the stone, a frantic, rambling monologue of a genius who has gone utterly, delightfully mad. His words are not the roars of a beast, but the feverish connections of a mind that sees too much. He speaks of the cosmos, of the great ones, of the umbilical cords that are the key to ascension. His logic, a twisted, brilliant tapestry woven from truth and insanity. As you once did for the vacuous Rom, grant us eyes, he shrieks, not as a plea, but as a statement of purpose. He is a living embodiment of the price of insight, a man who has gained the universe but lost his self. To corner him, to finally confront him in the dusty, spectral replica of his lecture hall, is to face the culmination of Biogenwith's legacy. His fight is not one of strength, but of persistence, a chase through the architecture of a broken psyche. And when he is finally, inevitably defeated, his last words are not a curse, but a wistful, confused sigh, a man fading from a dream he no longer understands, his final thought a question for the cosmos he sought to conquer. Now I'm waking up, I'll forget everything. His death does not end the nightmare, for the nightmare is larger than its host. It merely clears the path to the source, the core of the ritual. The brain of Mensis is a horror of a different order. A thing that should not be. A pulsating, immense organ of pure intellect suspended in a cage of its own making at the bottom of a dark shaft. It is blind, helpless, and utterly, terrifyingly aware. It radiates a pure, undiluted malevolence, a psychic scream of such intensity that it physically wounds the hunter to approach it. To interact with it is an exercise in profound existential cruelty. One can make contact with it, and in doing so, feel the raw, unfiltered torrent of its alien thoughts, a contact that rewards the hunter with a rune of immense power, but at the cost of a piece of their own sanity. Or, in an act of grotesque mercy, one can sever the supporting chains and send it plummeting into the abyss below. A fall that seems to last an eternity, the hunter's own mind falling with it, before a distant, wet, final impact echoes up from the darkness, and the constant, maddening singing of Yahargul finally, blessedly, ceases. This act, this silencing of the Mensis ritual, is another pivotal thread cut. The nightmare remains, but its engine is stilled. And high above, in the loft, the goal of the entire ritual is revealed, the wet nurse. This is the being the school of Mensis sought to contact, the great one they believed would grant them audience with a celestial child. Murgo's wet nurse is a creature of shadow and silence, a six-armed phantom of immense, graceful lethality, draped in tattered, black garments that flutter in a non-existent wind. It does not inhabit the world so much as it occludes it, a moving piece of absolute darkness against the dreamlike pastels of the loft. It is a guardian, a protector of the source of the ritual's power. The faint, ethereal crying of a baby that echoes throughout the chamber, the sound of Murgo, the infant great one, the child of formless Edon. The fight with the wet nurse is a dance with a void, a confrontation with a silence that eats sound, a darkness that consumes light. Its movements are a whisper. Its attacks the sudden, sharp absence of space where the hunter once stood. To defeat this spectral guardian is to silence the crying. It is to end the Mensis ritual not by breaking its machinery, but by fulfilling its purpose, making contact, and then severing it. When the wet nurse dissolves into dissipating smoke, the crying slowly fades, not into silence, but into a profound, echoing absence. A message appears, nightmare slain. It is not the death of a creature, but the end of a dream. The nightmare of Mensis, a pocket of reality built from stolen consciousness and mad prayer, begins to unravel at the edges, its colors bleeding, its forms losing coherence. And as it does, the hunter hears it, a soft, gentle, feminine humming. It is a lullaby, a soothing, ancient melody that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, a sound of profound, cosmic relief. It is the sound of a mother, Yharnam, the Pethumerian queen, her form appearing for a moment as a silent, blood-stained apparition, bowing in gratitude. Her long, tortured vigil is over. Her child is finally, truly at rest. This moment, this quiet, melancholic resolution at the peak of the most violent and insane of the nightmares is a paradox. It feels like an ending, a culmination. But the red moon still hangs, low and heavy, over the waking world. The doll's words echo. The night and the dream were long. There is still one more secret to uncover, one more layer to peel back. The hunt is not yet over. The true nature of the dream and the purpose of the moon presence still waits, shrouded in the pale, silent light of the hunter's one and only refuge. The return from the unraveling nightmare is not a journey, but a slow, reluctant coagulation back into a world that has become a different kind of terrible. The crimson glow of the moon is no longer an event. It is a state of being, the new and permanent color of the sky. The air in Yharnam feels used, exhausted, as if the city has screamed itself hoarse, and now can only manage this low, perpetual, psychic moan that vibrates in the fillings of your teeth and the marrow of your bones. The beasts, those tragic, twisted citizens, have grown stiller. Their frenzy has burned out, replaced by a kind of bewildered desolation. They stagger through the streets not with purpose, but with the lost, shuffling gait of sleepwalkers in a shared, waking nightmare, their growls softened to confused whimpers. The grand illusion of a functioning world has been stripped away, leaving only the raw, exposed nerve of reality, and even the monsters seem stunned by the revelation. The hunter's dream, when the hunter returns to it, feels different too. The perpetual twilight seems thinner, the gray tones of the workshop and the headstone garden washed out, as if the intense red of the waking world's moon is bleeding through from the other side. The little, winter-blooming flowers appear more vivid by contrast, their white petals almost luminous against the deepening gloom, their fragile scent a defiant pocket of sweetness in an atmosphere growing thick with finality. The doll is often found not in her usual place, but standing at the edge of the garden, looking out past the skeletal, blossoming tree, towards the unseen horizon where the dream ends. Her posture is not one of waiting, but of listening. "Ah, you've returned," she will say, her voice carrying a new, unplaceable weight, a sorrow that seems to belong not to her, but to the very essence of the dream itself. The night is near its end. It always has been. Her words are no longer simple comfort. They are a statement of fact, a reading from a script whose final page is now visible. Jayaman, too, is altered. His sleep is more troubled, his mutterings more distinct, less the ramblings of a fever dream and more the coherent, desperate pleas of a trapped man. "Oh, Lawrence, Master Willem," he will whisper, the names of the architects of this age spoken with the ghost of an old, familiar anguish. Somebody help me unshackle me. In these moments, the hunter sees not the first hunter, the legendary figure, but a man. A tired, broken old man bound to a purpose that has long since lost any meaning beyond its own endless repetition. The creak of his wheelchair as he shifts in his restless sleep is the sound of a chain, and the hunter begins to understand that they are not the only one trapped in this cycle. They are the latest in a long, long line, and Jayaman is the eternal warden, a prisoner tasked with overseeing the incarceration of others. It is in this atmosphere of impending conclusion that the hunter begins to piece together the final, most terrible secret, one that has been hiding not in the nightmares or the tombs, but in the very history of the hunt itself. The clues are scattered like shards of a broken mirror, each reflecting a different facet of the same awful truth. There are the third umbilical cords, items of profound and blasphemous significance. One is found in the abandoned workshop, hidden deep within the city, a place that is a dark echo of the dream itself, its tools rusted, its atmosphere heavy with the memory of a project abandoned. This cord speaks of a loss, a childhood begun and then severed. Another is granted after the confrontation with the fake Iosfka, the imposter physician in the clinic, her ambitions curdled into a pathetic, monstrous pregnancy, a failed attempt to become a vessel for a great one. Hers is a cord of arrogance and transgression. A third is dropped by the true, tragic Ariana, the woman of the night who, touched by the blood and the descent of the moon, gives birth to a small, writhing, celestial horror, a testament to the formless Edon's influence. Hers is a cord of violation and sorrow. And the final one is reaped from the mangled corpse of the Great One, Murgo's wet nurse, a cord born of a nightmare's end. To consume, one is to feel a jolt of pure, undiluted insight, a lightning strike to the inner eye that makes the world swim with phantom geometries and half-heard whispers. But to consume a third, to ingest the totality of this trinity of tragedy, is to undergo a fundamental alteration. The hunter's perception, already stretched thin by the revelations of the red moon, now tears completely. The world does not just look different, it is different. The doll, upon the next visit to the dream, will remark upon it, her porcelain face tilted in that familiar, gentle curiosity. "Ah, what splendid, sublime power you've acquired," she will say, and for the first time there is a flicker of something in her voice that is not mere programmed compassion, but something closer to recognition. "Are you cold?" The question is not about temperature. It is an inquiry into state of being. The hunter is becoming something else, something that stands on the threshold, and the doll, a being created by a great one, can sense the change. She is the canary in this cosmic coal mine, and her song has shifted its tune. This accumulation of power, this ingestion of the very substance of Great One lineage, is the key that unlocks the final door of the dream. The purpose of the hunt, the true purpose, now becomes horrifyingly clear. The night in Yharnam, with all its beasts and its blood, was merely the antechamber. The Mensis nightmare, with its mad scholars and its silenced infant, was a side chapel. The true cathedral is here, in this quiet, grey refuge. The hunt was never about cleansing Yharnam. That is a fool's errand, a temporary fix in an eternal cycle. The hunt is a ritual of a different kind, a culling conducted by the moon presence to maintain its own existence, to keep its chosen surrogate, Yharnam, bound to the dream, and to ensure a steady supply of powerful hunters to do its bidding, to silence any other potential challenges or disruptions in the cosmic order, like the crying of Murgo. The hunter has been a tool, a sophisticated, self-repairing weapon, and the night of the hunt is the whetstone upon which it is sharpened. The moment of confrontation is not announced with a fanfare, but with a change in the quality of the dream's silence. The gentle, ambient sounds, the whisper of the wind through the flowers, the distant, soft chime of a non-existent bell fade away, leaving a vacuum. Yharnam is awake. He is standing for the first time free from his wheelchair. He leans upon his burial blade, a scythe of beautiful, deadly craftsmanship. Its curved blade catching the pale light not with a gleam, but with a dull, hungry sheen. His posture is no longer that of a frail old man, but of a warrior, his frame straight, his presence filling the small garden. The sorrow is still in his eyes, but it is now fused with a grim, absolute resolve. Tonight, Yharnam joins the hunt, he says, and his voice is not the rasp of a sleeper, but the clear, resonant tone of the first hunter, the man who walked the darkest nights of old Yharnam and lived to forge its legacy. What follows is not a battle against a monster, but an elegy performed with steel. Yharnam does not fight with beastly fury or cosmic power. He fights with the distilled essence of the hunt itself. His movements are a devastating poetry of motion, each swing of his scythe a verse in a song of death he has been composing for a lifetime. He flows across the flower-strewn grass, his blade humming through the air, a reaper not of grain, but of hope. He is grace and melancholy given form, his attacks both brutally efficient and heartbreakingly beautiful. To fight him is to duel with a ghost, with a legend, with the very concept of the hunter. He will vanish in a swirl of petals and reappear with a strike that seems to come from the twilight itself. He will launch himself into the air, hanging for a moment against the pale moon of the dream, a silhouette of perfect, tragic purpose, before descending like a thunderbolt. This is his purpose, his curse. He is not trying to kill the hunter out of malice. He is offering them the only freedom he believes is possible. To be released from the dream, to forget the horrors, to wake up in the morning light of Yharnam as if it were all a bad dream. It is the mercy he has granted to countless hunters before, the mercy he desperately wishes for himself. You must accept your death, he grunts, between the ringing clashes of their weapons. Be freed from the night. But the hunter, armed with the terrible knowledge of the third umbilical cords, is no longer just a hunter. They have tasted the blood of gods, and Yharnam's mercy feels like a cage. To refuse his offer, to continue the fight, is to choose a different path, a path of defiance against the very entity that governs this cycle. It is to say that forgetting is not freedom, but a deeper kind of imprisonment. When Jayaman finally falls, it is not with a roar, but with a long, shuddering sigh. He slumps to the ground, his burial blade clattering beside him. The fight has left him looking not defeated, but relieved. The immense weight of his duty seems to lift from his shoulders, if only for this final moment. "Dear, oh dear," he murmurs, his voice returning to that of the old, tired man. What was it? The hunt, the blood, or the horrible dream? He looks up, his eyes searching the hunter's face, not for an answer, but for a shared understanding of the absurd tragedy of it all. Oh, it doesn't matter. It always comes down to the hunter's helper to clean up after these sort of messes. His head bows. Tonight, Jayaman joins the hunt, and then he is still. The first hunter is free. For a moment, there is only silence. The dream is perfectly, profoundly quiet. The doll from her place at the edge of the garden speaks softly, her words a eulogy. "Farewell, good hunter, may you find your worth in the waking world." But the waking world does not come. The pale moon above the dream, which has been a constant, watchful presence, begins to pulse. It is a slow, rhythmic throb, like a heartbeat. The light in the dream dims, the colors leaching away until everything is rendered in shades of black and deepest blue. The air grows cold, a chill that has nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with proximity, with the closing of a vast, celestial hand. From the pulsating moon, a presence descends. It does not fall. It unfolds like a flower blooming in reverse, its petals made of bone and shadow and impossible angles. This is the moon presence, Flora, the nameless moon-scented hunter. It is the architect of the dream, the master of the hunt, the reason for the cycle. It is a being of stark, anatomical elegance and profound, mind-shattering horror. Its form is pale, almost skeletal, with long, spindly limbs that end in delicate, cruel fingers. Its body is a collection of contradictions, both emaciated and powerful, graceful and utterly alien. Its head is featureless save for a fleshy, frilled appendage that frames a void, a darkness that feels more like an absence than a face. It makes no sound as it moves, its bare feet not touching the ground, but gliding just above the flowers, which now wilt and blacken in its wake. This is the true final boss of the hunt, not a beast to be slain, but a system to be overthrown, a god to be challenged. Its very presence is an attack on sanity, a pressure that seeks to flatten the hunter's will, to force them into the role Jayaman has vacated, to become the new warden of the dream, the new eternal host, a surrogate for the moon presence's lonely, cosmic existence. This was its pact, its purpose. To find a strong human, bind them to the dream, and use them to perpetuate the hunt forever. The hunter, however, is no longer merely human. The power of the third, umbilical cords courses through them. A rebellion forged from the very lineage of the great ones the moon presence seeks to manipulate. The fight that ensues is unlike any that has come before. It is not a contest of strength or speed, but of will and essence. The moon presence does not attack with physical blows, but with conceptual ones. It slashes with blades of pale light that seem to cut through time itself, leaving the hunter disoriented, their memories fraying at the edges. It can halt the hunter's very life force, freezing their ability to heal, imposing a state of absolute, vulnerable mortality. It is fighting to impose a story, the same old story that has been told countless times. But the hunter, infused with the power of multiple great ones, resists the narrative. They are writing a new ending. When their weapons strike the moon presence, they do not bite into flesh, but into idea, into purpose. Each successful blow feels like the tearing of a page from a sacred text. The creature's silence becomes its most terrifying feature, its movements a ballet of absolute, indifferent power. There is no rage in its attacks, only the cold, efficient motion of a gardener pruning a plant that has grown beyond its designated shape. The final moments of the confrontation are a silent, explosive unraveling. As the moon presence is overcome, it does not roar or scream. It simply comes apart. Its pale form dissolves, not into blood or viscera, but into a shower of shimmering, incandescent particles, like a constellation scattering itself across the sky. The oppressive presence vanishes, the terrible cold recedes, and the crushing weight of its will is lifted. The dream is silent once more, but it is a different kind of silence. It is the silence after a storm, the silence of a held breath finally released. The hunter stands alone in the garden. Jayaman is gone. The moon presence is gone. The doll is still there, but she is no longer looking out at the horizon. She is looking at the hunter. She kneels, and in her hands she cradles something, a small, squirming, pale, formless thing. The hunter, in overcoming the moon presence, has not simply ended the hunt. They have ascended. The power of the third umbilical cords, the culmination of all the suffering, the ambition, the loss, and the insight, has catalyzed within them. They have become an infant great one, a new, nascent celestial being, the next step in a cosmic evolution that began in the sunless labyrinths of the Pithumerians. The doll's voice is the last sound the hunter hears, not as a human, but as something new, something that is just beginning. "Ah, good hunter," she whispers, her tone one of wondrous maternal awe. She is no longer a mere puppet. In this new reality, she has found her own purpose. "You've done well. The night is over. Now let us begin a new dream." The silence that follows is not empty, but full. It is the silence of a canvas after the final brushstroke, of a page after the last word is written, a silence that contains the echo of everything that has come before. The hunter, no, the being that was once the hunter, floats in a state of pure potential, a consciousness unmoored from the crude anchors of bone and blood. The world of the dream, the soft grays and the scent of flowers, has dissolved into a swirling nebula of sensation and memory. They can feel the intricate clockwork of the cosmos turning around them. can hear the low, resonant hum of celestial bodies moving in their ancient, prescribed dances. It is a symphony of such vast, complex beauty that it would have shattered a human mind. But to this new form, it is a lullaby, the first music of a new existence. The doll, or the being that manifested as the doll, cradles the nascent Great One with a tenderness that is both ancient and utterly new. Her porcelain fingers, which once offered cool, artificial comfort, now seem to radiate a gentle, nurturing warmth. She is no longer a mere echo of Jayaman's grief, a phantom of pity given form by the moon presence. With the old dream dead and its master gone, she has been unshackled. She is becoming something else, her own purpose flowering in the fertile ground of this new beginning. She is the midwife to this rebirth, the first and only witness to the silent, glorious trauma of apotheosis. Her whispered words, "Let us begin a new dream," are not a suggestion, but a declaration. They are the foundational axiom of a reality yet to be built. What is a dream, after all, but a world given shape by a will? The hunter's dream was a construct, a gilded cage built from Jayaman's despair and the moon presence's cold, cyclical hunger. It was a reactive thing, a mechanism. This new dream will be different. It will be proactive, a creation. The hunter, now the infant Great One, is its heart, its source. Their consciousness, forged in the fires of Yharnam's suffering and tempered by the ingestion of cosmic truths, will be the loom upon which the fabric of this new realm is woven. It will not be a refuge for hunters, a green room for violence. What will it be? A library of all the knowledge gathered from the ruins of Biogenwith and the choir's cold observatories. A gallery for the beautiful, terrible art of the cosmos. A place where the songs of the stars can be heard as clearly as the whispering of leaves. Or perhaps a garden, vast and serene, where the flowers are thoughts given petal and scent, and the trees are memories given root and branch. The possibilities unfold like the petals of a flower that has never known sun or season, each one a different hue of potential. The doll, her form beginning to subtly shift and soften at the edges, as if the idea of doll is becoming less literal and more conceptual, hums a soft, wordless tune. It is the same tune the hunter heard after silencing Murgo, the lullaby of Yharnam, queen of the Pithumerians. But now, it is no longer a song of ending, of release from an old pain. It is a song of beginning. The melody is the same, yet its meaning has been transfigured, just as the hunter has been transfigured. It is the first thread being spun for the new tapestry. Meanwhile, in the world left behind, the waking world of Yharnam, the consequences of this cosmic shift are settling like fine, metaphysical dust. The red moon has not vanished. How could it? It is a celestial body, a fact of the heavens, but its presence has changed. The crushing, malevolent intelligence that once pulsed from it is gone. The moon presence is no more, and without its will giving the crimson light a terrible purpose, the moon is just a moon. Its light still washes the city in that same bloody hue, but the terror has bled out of it. The hum has ceased. The psychic pressure that was driving men and beasts to a final, shrieking madness has simply evaporated, leaving behind a bewildered, hollowed-out silence. The beasts in the streets stop their bewildered shuffling. They look up at the red sky, their bestial faces, for a moment, seeming to register a change they cannot comprehend. The frenzy is gone from their eyes, replaced by a deep, exhausted confusion. The ones who still retain some shred of their former selves might feel a vague, unplaceable sense of loss, as if a constant, painful noise they had grown accustomed to has suddenly stopped, leaving and ringing absence in its wake. The few surviving, sane citizens huddled behind their doors will feel it too. The overwhelming dread that made it difficult to breathe, that made every shadow seem alive with malicious intent, has receded. It is not replaced by peace. Yharnam is still a city of monsters and ruins, but by a strange, new quiet. The night is no longer actively hostile. It is simply dark and long and waiting. The sunrise, when it finally comes, will be a different kind of revelation. It will not be the glorious, cleansing dawn the citizens prayed for during the hunt. The sun will have to fight its way through the residual haze of blood and incense, its light weak and pale, casting long, tired shadows across the cop-strewn plazas and blood-caked cobblestones. It will illuminate the devastation in all its stark, unflinching detail. The toppled carriages, the splintered doors, the dark stains that have soaked into the very stone of the city. It will be a grim, sobering light, a dawn that offers no promises of healing, only the certainty of a long, arduous reckoning. The hunt is over, but the recovery has not yet begun. The healing church is in ruins, its leadership decimated, its doctrine proven to be a catastrophic lie. The city is a patient after a failed, experimental surgery, left to heal on its own, if it can heal at all. And in the unseen spaces, the other great ones stir. The amygdalae, clinging to the cathedral spires, shift their countless limbs with a slow, thoughtful rustle of stone on stone. Their purpose, whatever it was in the context of the moon presence's grand design, has been voided. Some may simply retreat, pulling their forms back into the higher dimensions, becoming once more invisible to any without sufficient insight. Others may remain, now mere observers of a world that has suddenly, dramatically, changed its course. They are ancient, patient beings, and the rise and fall of a surrogate like the moon presence is, to them, perhaps no more significant than the falling of a leaf. Yet the birth of a new great one is always an event of note in the cold, vast ecology of the cosmos. They will be aware of it. They will feel the new, faint gravitational pull of the infant consciousness, a new star igniting in the spiritual firmament. Back in the nascent dream, the process of creation continues, slow and organic as the growth of a forest. The formless nebula of potential begins to coalesce around core concepts, around the strongest memories and impressions of the being who is its source. A faint, silvery path begins to form under the doll's feet, not of stone or earth, but of solidified moonlight. It winds away from the central, nurturing space, leading into a soft, gathering mist. From this mist, the ghost of an architecture begins to rise. It is not the oppressive, clawing Gothic of Yharnam, nor the inverted, pulsating stone of the labyrinths. It is something lighter, more graceful, with sweeping arches that seem to be made of frozen music and pillars that resemble the trunks of ancient, benevolent trees. It is an architecture of thought, a geometry of solace. The doll walks this silver path, the infant great one resting in her arms. She is its guide, its first and most intimate connection to the concept of care, of love. She is defining the very nature of this new realm through her actions. As she walks, small, luminous flowers begin to bloom along the edges of the path, their light a soft, blue-white, like the light of a friendly star. They are not the winter blooms of the old dream. They are flowers of a spring that has never been seen on earth, their petals unfolding to reveal tiny, intricate patterns that shift and change when looked upon, each one a captured moment of peace from the hunter's long journey. A moment of quiet respite before a lit lantern, the determined kindness of a few sane words in a sea of madness, the simple, profound act of the doll bowing in greeting. This is how the new dream builds itself. It is not being constructed, but remembered, imagined, and wished into being. It is a patchwork of all the beauty and peace that was so scarce in the world that forged its creator, a sanctuary built from the echoes of respite. There are no headstones here. There is no workshop filled with cruel, clever weapons. There is no gnarled, skeletal tree. The tools of the hunt have no place in this new Genesis. The only sounds are the doll's humming, the soft chime of the celestial flowers brushing against one another in a non-existent breeze, and the deep, quiet pulse of the infant great one's slow, contented heartbeat, a rhythm that is slowly becoming the fundamental tempo of this new world. The hunter's journey began with a contract, a signature in blood that bound them to a night of endless violence and cyclical death. It was a story written by others, a part they were forced to play. But here, at the end of all things and the beginning of everything, the script has been burned. The old stage has been dismantled. There is only the quiet, the potential, and the gentle, unwavering presence of the doll, who is no longer a doll, but a companion, a guardian, a fellow dreamer. The hunt is over. The nightmare is slain. But the dream is just now learning how to breathe. The silvery path continues its meandering course, unfolding not as a predestined route, but as a responsive ribbon of light, curling and branching in reaction to the faint, unspoken whims of the new consciousness it carries. It leads them to a vast, placid body of what appears to be water, but its surface does not reflect the nascent architecture or the swirling nebula above. Instead, it holds the image of a calm, gray ocean under a misty sky, a perfect, silent replica of the real Moonside Lake, but purged of its terrible secret. This is not a place to hide a vacuous spider, but a place for contemplation, a mirror for a mind that now contains multitudes. At its center is a small, flat island, and upon it grows a single, magnificent tree. Its bark is the color of weathered silver, and its leaves are not green, but a shifting tapestry of deep blues and violets, each one seeming to contain a captured star within its velvety texture. As the doll approaches, the tree shivers, not from wind, but in recognition, and one low-hanging branch dips gracefully, offering a perch. She sits upon the root that cradles the island's edge, the infant great one resting in the pool of her lap, and gazes out across the still, non-reflective water. This is the first true landmark of the new dream, an anchor point born from a memory of profound transition, now gentled into a haven of pure thought. The silence here is a living thing. It is not the absence of sound, but a medium through which subtler perceptions can travel. In this quiet, the infant great one's consciousness begins to expand, not in a violent, shattering wave like Rom's, but in a soft, pervasive diffusion. It touches the fragments of the world it has left behind. It feels the echoes of Yharnam's suffering not as a sharp pain, but as a dull, resonant ache, a foundational note in the chord of its own being. It senses the bewildered relief of the beasts, the exhausted terror of the few survivors, the empty, ringing silence of the grand cathedral. These are not its burdens to carry, not anymore, but they are the pigments on its palette, the notes of its scale. To understand peace, one must remember chaos. To comprehend creation, one must know destruction. This is the paradox of its ascension. It has transcended humanity not by forgetting it, but by integrating the totality of the human experience, the fear, the love, the ambition, the despair, into a form that can now hold it without breaking. The doll feels this expansion. Her form, seated by the silver tree, seems to become more real, more detailed. The subtle seams where her porcelain joints met are now barely visible, fading like scars in healing flesh. The fixed, gentle smile on her face softens into something more nuanced, capable of expressing a profound, quiet sadness for the world that was, and a tremulous, hopeful joy for the world that is being born. She begins to speak, not in the scripted phrases of a caretaker, but in the flowing, spontaneous words of a collaborator. "They are so loud in their silence," she murmurs, her voice blending with the soft rustle of the star leaves above. "The ones left behind, their confusion is a color, a dull, bruised purple, and there a flicker of gold. A man has found his daughter, or what remains of her. The emotion is so small, so fragile, but it burns brightly." She is not just describing the waking world. She is interpreting its emotional spectrum for the infant, translating the raw data of existence into a language of feeling. She is the curator of this new reality, helping its architect understand the materials from which it is built. As she speaks, the environment responds. On the far shore of the lake, a soft, golden light begins to glow, mirroring the faint flicker of hope she described. It does not illuminate anything. It simply is a warm, pulsing ember in the twilight of the dream. It is the first instance of the dream not just remembering, but empathizing. It is a monument to a single, tiny victory in a sea of loss, a testament that this new world will not be blind to the struggles of the old. Time, in this place, has no linear flow. It is a pool in which past, present, and potential future swirl together. The hunter's memories rise to the surface not as intrusive flashbacks, but as offerings. The determined loyalty of the little girl in the window, giving her a music box to calm her beast father. The weary, tragic wisdom of Jura, looking down from his burned-out spire. The final, grateful bow of Queen Yharnam. These moments float like lilies on the surface of the lake, each one perfect and self-contained, their sorrow acknowledged, but their beauty extracted. The dream absorbs them, and in doing so, transforms them. The memory of the music box ceases to be a trigger for Gascoigne's brief lucidity, and becomes a simple, tinkling melody that occasionally drifts from the silver tree, a harmless and beautiful ghost of a tragic past. This process of alchemy, of turning the lead of a painful history into the gold of a serene present, is the central work of the new dream. The infant Great One does not command it to happen. It occurs naturally as a function of its state of being. Its consciousness is a filter, straining out the agony and retaining the essence, the love in the loyalty, the honor in the defiance, the peace in the resolution. The nightmare of Mensis, with its mad singing and twitching corpses, does not manifest here. But the concept of fervent belief, stripped of its destructive fanaticism, might one day form the basis for a choir of lights that sing harmonies with the stars. The hunter's brutal struggle against the Orphan of Kos in the hunter's nightmare is not recreated, but the raw, oceanic fury of that place is distilled into the powerful, yet placid energy of the lake itself. The doll is essential to this. She is the grounding wire. Without her, the infant's consciousness, vast and inexperienced, might drift into pure abstraction, becoming a realm of cold, beautiful mathematics, another distant and unfeeling cosmos. But her presence, her inherent and now fully realized capacity for compassion, roots the dream in something relatable, something warm. She teaches it about care through the simple act of holding it. She teaches it about patience by sitting with it for what might be eons, unmoving, watching the star leaves drift down to kiss the surface of the lake. She is the heart of this new body, pumping the blood of empathy through its nascent veins. After a time that cannot be measured, the doll rises. The path of moonlight has multiplied in their stillness, creating a delicate spiderweb of bridges and landings over the lake, leading to other half-formed vistas. One bridge glows with a warm, scholarly amber, and the faint scent of old parchment, and lake mist whispers from its end. A potential library, a Biogenworth redeemed of its hubris. Another shimmers with the cool, blue-white of a winter morning, hinting at quiet, snow-blanketed courtyards, where the only sound is the crunch of frost underfoot. The dream is exploring its own possibilities, trying on different moods and textures like garments. The doll chooses none of these. Instead, she walks back the way they came, toward the very center of the dream, the place where Jayaman's workshop once stood. but the workshop is gone. In its place is a small, open pavilion, its roof supported by slender pillars of the same silverwood as the tree. At its center is not a weapon-making bench, but a simple, circular pool of clear water. This is the nexus, the quiet eye of the storm. She kneels beside the pool and gently lowers the infant Great One into the water. It does not sink, but floats, cradled by the surface tension, its pale, formless body seeming to drink in the clarity of the pool. This is the final severance, the true baptism. The waters of this pool are not for healing physical wounds, nor are they the murky medium of the old blood. They are the waters of clarity, of acceptance. As the infant floats there, the last clinging vestiges of its former life, the adrenaline of the hunt, the grit of Yharnam's streets on its skin, the metallic taste of blood in its mouth, all dissolve away, rinsed clean by this new, pure element. What remains is the core self, the essential being that undertook the journey, now amplified to a cosmic scale. The pool does not erase the past, it sanctifies it, setting it at a respectful distance, turning a lived horror into a remembered myth. The doll sits back on her heels, her hands folded in her lap. Her work, for now, is complete. She has guided the transition, nurtured the birth, and helped lay the foundation. The dream now has its heart and its anchor. The rest, the filling in of the landscapes, the populating of its quiet spaces with echoes and memories, the slow definition of its purpose, will be the work of the Great One itself, a project that may take centuries or mere moments, a creation that will never truly be finished, but will always be in the state of becoming. The long night is over, the hunt has ended, and here, in the endless, gentle afternoon of this new dream, something is finally, quietly at peace. The only movement is the slow, serene pulsing of the infant in the water, a new rhythm for a new world, a lullaby for a cosmos that has, at last, learned how to rest. The stillness of the pavilion is a different quality of silence than that of the Silver-Tree Lake. Here, at the nexus, the quiet is absolute, a pristine vacuum where even the faintest whisper of thought seems to echo into eternity. The water in the pool does not ripple, holding the infant Great One in a perfect, weightless embrace, its surface a pane of flawless glass between the dream and the infinite possibilities beneath. The doll does not move. She has become a statue of serene vigilance, her form now so fully realized that the very air around her seems to thicken with a protective tenderness. Her eyes, once painted on symbols of compassion, now hold a depth of understanding that is both ancient and newborn, reflecting the pale, floating form in the water not as an image, but as a core truth of her own existence. This is the gestation. The infant is not sleeping, but dreaming, and its dreams are the substance from which the rest of this realm will be sculpted. In its formless state, it perceives not in images or words, but in essences, in the pure emotional and philosophical weight of the experiences that forged it. The concept of suffering is not a memory of pain, but a heavy, dark mineral, cold to the touch. The concept of insight is a shimmering, volatile gas that threatens to expand beyond any container. Sacrifice is a crystal, multifaceted and sharp, beautiful and dangerous. And mercy is a warm, soft light, fragile yet persistent. These are the raw materials, and the dream is the workshop. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the environment beyond the pavilion begins to respond to this internal alchemy. The bridge that glowed with a scholarly amber begins to define itself. The amber light coalesces into walls of soft, golden-hued wood, and the scent of parchment and like mist solidifies into a great, circular hall. But this is no lecture building haunted by the moans of shriveled scholars. This is a library of solace. The books on the endless shelves are not written in any human language. Their spines glow with soft, internal light, and to simply be near them is to understand a concept, to feel a resolved emotion. One volume might radiate a profound sense of closure, another the quiet joy of a puzzle solved. There are no unanswered questions here, only integrated answers. The knowledge of Biogenwith and the choir is present, but it has been purified of its arrogance and desperation. The mad, scrambling hunger for eyes has been transformed into a calm, encompassing perception. A hunter who had once sought insight would find here not madness, but a deep, soothing balm for a fractured mind. Simultaneously, the bridge of winter morning light extends into a landscape of gentle, rolling hills blanketed in snow, so pure it seems to glow from within. The air is crisp and clean, carrying the faint, sweet scent of frost and the distant, woody fragrance of pine. The silence here is profound, a hush that feels respectful, as if the world is holding its breath so as not to disturb a sacred peace. This is a realm for forgetting, not in the sense of amnesia, but in the way a deep snowfall covers the scars of the earth, offering a clean slate. There are no footprints in this snow, no memories to track. It is a place of pure, unadulterated present, a sanctuary for a consciousness that has earned the right to rest from the weight of its own history. The cold is not biting, but invigorating, a clarity that sharpens the senses without the associated pain. The dull, sensing these developments, allows the faintest hint of a smile to touch her lips. It is a smile of approval, of witnessing a child's first, successful steps. She does not direct the growth, but she observes it, her presence a stabilizing constant that ensures the burgeoning landscapes remain harmonious, that the library of solace does not encroach upon the snowy fields of forgetfulness, that each distinct mood of the dream has its own sacred space to breathe. She is the gardener of this impossible ecology, tending to moods and memories as another might tend to roses and lilies. Back in the waking world, the first true day is dawning. The pale, weak sun struggles through the haze, and as its light touches the high spires of the cathedral ward, a new phenomenon occurs. The amygdalae, the great ones clinging to the architecture, begin to loosen their grip. It is a slow, deliberate motion. One by one, they peel their many-fingered hands from the stonework, their stony limbs uncurling with the sound of grinding granite. They do not vanish in a flash, but fade, their forms becoming translucent, then transparent, then mere heat shimmers in the air, and then nothing at all. They are not retreating in defeat, but departing in acknowledgement. The game has changed. The old bard has been swept clear. Their watch is over. The last to fade is the one draped across the face of the grand cathedral itself, and as its form dissolves, a single, petal-like scale of its stony skin drifts down, turning to dust before it can land on the blood-soaked steps below. In the streets, the beasts, bathed in the grim, honest light of day, are undergoing their own final transformation. The madness has left them, and without the sustaining fury of the hunt and the moon presence's influence, the energy that warped their bodies is receding. It is not a reversion. They cannot become the men and women they once were. That path is closed forever. Instead, a profound exhaustion claims them. The grotesque muscles that strained against their clothes begin to atrophy before one's eyes, not with pain, but with a deep, weary sigh. The elongated spines sag, the bestial features slacken. They do not die, but simply settle. They curl up in doorways in the lee of overturned carriages, like animals after a long and terrible migration, and a deep, final sleep takes them. Their forms become still, the last vestiges of the old blood's power cooling within them, leaving behind only husks, tragic sculptures in a city-sized museum of a failed dream. The scourge is not cured. It is simply, finally, over. This quiet apocalypse is witnessed by a handful of souls. The skeptical man in the window, who had scoffed at the hunter's quest, now looks out upon a street littered with sleeping giants and feels not fear, but a hollow, bewildered grief. The lonely woman who offered seductive, desperate comfort behind her door now hears only the wind whistling through the empty lanes. The sense of a pervasive, active evil has vanished, leaving behind the stark, mundane reality of a city in ruins. The horror has passed, but the tragedy remains, a monument to hubris that will take generations to dismantle, if it is ever dismantled at all. In the new dream, the infant Great One floating in the Nexus pool experiences this not as a visual scene, but as a shift in the foundational tones of existence. It feels the great, collective exhalation of Yharnam, the release of a tension that had been held for centuries. This exhalation enters the dream as a soft, sighing wind that rustles the star leaves of the silver tree and ripples, for the first time, the surface of the clear pool. The infant responds not with action, but with a deepening of its own state of being. The essence of ending within it, which was once sharp and final, like the cut of Jayaman's scythe, now softens, blending with the essence of mercy to form a new, more complex element. Acceptance. This new element begins to manifest in the dream. In the snowy fields, a gentle, warm breeze springs up, carrying the scent of thawing earth, not to melt the snow, but to promise that beneath its perfect blanket life persists. In the Library of Solace, a new section of shelves quietly assembles itself, and the books here glow with a soft, gray light. These are the volumes of tragedy and failure, but they do not radiate despair. They radiate a profound, quiet understanding. To be near them is to feel that every loss, every mistake, is a thread in a vast, beautiful, and ultimately benevolent tapestry. It is the final gift of the dream. Not to erase pain, but to contextualize it within an eternity of peace. The doll finally rises from her knees. She steps into the pool, the water making no resistance, welcoming her as it welcomes the infant. She does not sink, but stands upon the surface, her feet causing gentle, concentric circles to spread outwards. She looks down at the formless being, and for the first time she reaches out and touches it. Her finger, warm and real, makes contact with its pale, nebulous substance. "Your worth was never in the waking world," she whispers, her voice the sound of the universe itself consoling its child. "It was always here." In the will to see the night through to its end, and in the courage to imagine a new morning. The touch is a catalyst. The infant Great One, having integrated the past and conceived the future, now turns its focus inward to its own identity. The formless body in the pool begins to change. It does not coalesce into a human shape, nor does it mimic the alien anatomy of the moon presence or the amygdala. It becomes something unique, a form that reflects its journey. A soft, internal luminescence blooms within it, the color of a dawn after a long storm, pale gold and rose and the faintest, most hopeful blue. Tendrils of light, reminiscent of the lumenwood flowers, but made of pure thought, gently unfold from its center. Its core takes on a shape that is both weapon and tool, a beautiful, abstract geometry that speaks of a cleaver that healed as much as it harmed, a scythe that reaped despair to sow peace, a pistol that parried fate itself. It is the embodiment of the hunter's resolve, translated into a new, celestial language. This is its true form, not a disguise or a surrogate, but its authentic self. The dream shivers in response, a joyous, resonant tremor that runs along the moonlit paths and through the pillars of the pavilion. The creation is complete. The dream is no longer a potentiality. It is a reality with a heart, a landscape, and a purpose. It is a sanctuary for all that was lost and all that was learned, a kingdom built not on blood, but on the memory of it, a testament to the idea that even from the greatest depths of darkness, a light can be kindled that is all the more beautiful for the shadows it has overcome. And at its center, in a pool of perfect clarity, a new Great One dreams its first, true dream, while its first and most faithful companion stands watch, a smile on her face and an eternity of quiet mornings in her eyes. The silence that followed was not an emptiness, but a presence. It was the silence of a held breath finally released, of a watchful tension in the very air dissolving into a gentle, pervasive calm. The new form of the Great One, no longer an infant, but a nascent constellation of resolved purpose, pulsed with a light that was both soft and immense, illuminating the pavilion not by casting shadows, but by gently persuading the darkness to retreat of its own accord. The abstract geometry of its core, a silent symphony of cleaver, scythe, and pistol, turned slowly in the clear water, each facet reflecting not light, but meaning, a fragment of a vow kept, a moment of mercy granted, a truth hard won from the jaws of madness. This was not a god to be worshipped, but a truth to be inhabited, a quiet conclusion to a violent question. The doll, standing upon the water, felt the completion settle into the foundations of the dream. Her own transformation was likewise finalized. The last vestige of her porcelain artifice melted away, leaving behind a being of woven starlight and profound compassion. Her form both solid and ethereal, as tangible as a memory and as boundless as a wish. She was the dream's first resident, its eternal caretaker, and in her eyes shone the quiet joy of a story that has, against all odds, found a beautiful ending. She did not speak, for no words were needed. Her very presence was a benediction, a final note in the long, somber lullaby that had begun in a city of blood. And as the new Great One dreamed its first, conscious dream, the world it had left behind continued its slow, painful turn into the light. Yharnam, beneath the now ordinary red moon, began the long, silent work of remembrance. Its streets filled not with the snarls of beasts, but with the ghosts of what was, and the fragile, trembling hope for what might one day be. The hunt was over. The nightmare was slain. And in the gentle, everlasting afternoon of the new dream, a profound and lasting peace settled, a testament to the enduring power of a will that refused to break, and a heart that learned, in the end, how to finally and truly rest.